Yo, yo, it's time to discover the flow. Shout out to the bros. You know, I like to welcome everybody to discover the flow. No matter how you discovered the show or discovered the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for discover the flow. Yeah, cowabunga do. You know live is how we come to you. Turn the levels up when you hear the boys coming through. The Pod Squad giving you just what you need, hitting you with a new special guest every week. Don't you dare hit skip, man, it's Tristan and Kip. DTF Pod about to take you on a trip. Mega Ran bring the heat, yeah. But be clear, I wasn't even supposed to be here. Welcome to Discover the Flow. No matter how you discovered the show or discovered the pros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for Discover the Flow. Let's start the show.
So how's it going, man?
Not too bad. How are you guys?
Not too bad.
Having what's a very mild Chicago December for us.
Yeah,
it's been in the 50s this week so far, so it's a little weird for us.
Very weird, actually.
That's not too bad.
How's the weather up in Toronto?
I'm just about an hour northeast of Toronto, actually. So we just got our first real snow last weekend, but it's pretty much all gone.
So what denotes a real snow up that way?
Enough where you gotta clear out the driveway.
Okay. Yeah, we still haven't got one of those yet this year. So
yeah, we've just gotten pepperings pretty much so far. But where about in Canada did you grow up at?
I grew up in Toronto.
Oh, okay. So you've been there pretty much your whole life?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Toronto. I was there for 40 years. And then my wife and I, during the pandemic, decided we wanted some space. The one-bedroom condo by the lake was no longer big enough for us when we weren't allowed to go anywhere. So we looked around for a place where we could have rooms and shit. So moved up to a small town just northeast of the city where actually her folks live, and got a nice house in a little cul-de-sac.
Yeah, we had an interesting lockdown for COVID out here. Our town in Naperville had riots in it. It was weird, which it was good enough where I already discovered that I love and hate people at the same time. So I kind of enjoyed isolation, but when you live about 2 blocks away from where cops are shooting gas cans at people, or tear gas at people, that was a little bit of a shock for us.
Yeah, I'd say that would be a bit odd.
Especially when you're watching it on TV and you can hear it out your window at the same time.
Yeah, it's never fun when you get to play the game. Is that a gunshot or a firework?
Yeah,
that's never fun.
So we don't really do an intro here, just to let you know. We're already kicking and going.
Okay.
We kind of like to keep it more like a casual conversation instead of a real interview. You know what I mean? But with that, we'll get into questions though, to make it anything but.
First of all, before we get started, I just want to say huge fan. Love Letterkenny.
So much.
Loved your comedy, loved your stand-up. So that's why we asked to interview you today, because we're both big fans.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like I feel like I was late to the party because all my friends were watching Letterkenny and knew about your comedy and everything and this and that, and then they had all moved on, and I just started Letterkenny. So it was a rewatch for all of them and a first time for me. But man, I've loved the show for the last 2 years now. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah, right on. It's always funny, like people are still just discovering it, and I guess that's the weird thing about streamers is, like, until you have the thing that streams that thing,
right,
it's just something you might hear about. Like out of the blue, I've gotten, like, this past year, I got a message out of nowhere from Kevin Owens, the wrestler.
We know exactly who that is. Yeah.
Just discovered Letterkenny this past year. Someone turned him onto it. and he was like, I just finally watched this show and it's awesome. And I just wanted to message you to say that I love this show. And it was like, oh man, that's so crazy. But I also know like so many of your coworkers were addicted to this show like 5 years ago.
Right.
Like Alexa Bliss was pumping our tires from the moment we hit the ground.
So that said, you're a wrestling fan, I take it.
Oh, huge wrestling nerd. Yeah.
I saw that
for a hot minute when I was 30.
Wait, to train to be a wrestler?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Where did you train at?
The Squared Circle gym.
Okay.
In just outside of Toronto. It's an offshoot of the school where Edge and Christian and Trish Stratus all trained. It's not the same trainers that when they were there, but it's an offshoot of that. And it was like this weird situation where this guy wanted to promote a wrestling comedy show. And he wanted the comedians to bump and like be involved in the matches.
Interesting.
His name happened to be Colt Cabana.
No. Although I've met Colt.
Okay, yeah.
That sounds like something Colt would have wanted to do.
Yeah, we've actually known him for probably about 20 years.
Mainly a comedian, but a big wrestling fan, and he got this idea and talked El Fuego, who was the head of the school and an indie wrestler, longtime indie wrestler in Toronto, to like team up with them on it. So they opened up the school for us comics to come and train, and so we wouldn't kill ourselves when the show happened. And then we were training for a few weeks, and then the guy who was promoting it just disappeared.
That's
sounds about right.
That's very
no one could get a hold of him, and no one knew what was going on. So Fuego was like, until we figure it out, you guys are cool to keep coming by, and then when we know what's going on, we'll figure out what's going from there. So I kept going for a few weeks, and I was having a blast doing it. I've never had more fun being in more pain in my entire life, but my stand-up was really starting to take off. So I was on the road, and it was like every time I came, so I'd like, I wouldn't be able to train every week and as many times a week as I should. And every time I came back, my body had like reset.
Oh yeah.
It was almost like starting over every time I went back. And the other guys were all advancing, and I was kind of like way behind. And I was like, I'm going to hurt somebody or I'm going to get hurt, because I just don't have the time to commit to this that it needs. Like, this isn't something I can just do casually. And
yeah,
so
no, it takes serious time. Yeah.
Yeah, we've both been involved with indie wrestling for 20, 25 years. So, yeah, I get it.
It was like,
I've been in that position that you're
guys, but, I'm going to go focus on my one crazy moron dream that's paying my rent right now, and circle back to this maybe in the future when I don't need to take every job offered to me. And
yeah, you got to prioritize.
Well, I mean, listen, I have been doing it for about 25 years. I got about a year or two left in me. So that gives you time to do a little bit of training. And if my tag partner bails out, you can come and be with me in my last match as Dan Bigelow.
Right on. I have had offers to finish my training with different guys over the years.
Listen, you just sit there and look pretty as you can, as I'll do all the work and then just tag you in, and you're Superman at the end.
That's what you already do with your current tag partners. So it really doesn't make a difference.
So I know how to do it. Yeah, I do all the work. I'm the road dog. He's Billy Gunn. Comes in, looks like $1 million, and we're good. We're good. So does that mean, are you, or did you have a hand in writing the the Letterkenny back and forth where it was the cold open with all the wrestling analogies and everything and everybody's names?
Whenever there was wrestling stuff, I was always like they always checked with me to make sure it was 100% like. But that was actually all written by Trevor Risk, who was one of the writers for Letterkenny, who was also a huge wrestling fan. And Risky and I always talked wrestling whenever he came by set, and always loved, the two of us always loved trying to squeeze wrestling references. Like anytime there was a wrestling reference in Letterkenny, it was either me ad-libbing or Risky putting it in there, because we're both big wrestling geeks. So that whole thing was actually written by Trevor Risk, and I didn't have to, I had no notes for it. It was perfect.
Yeah,
So-
that's one of my favorite cold opens for any TV show anywhere ever.
So as a Letterkenny fan and a wrestling fan, but that's got nothing to do with the question. As a Letterkenny fan, I got to know, and because we already broached the subject, let's get it out of the way because we don't want to spend all night on Letterkenny either. How much of the dialogue was written and how much were you guys ad-libbing? Because it sounds like it's a lot of ad-libbing if you listen to it, but I don't know.
I'd say probably 80% written. I mean, just because it's so rapid fire and boom,
Okay.
boom, boom, quick, like there's no way you could, no one's fast enough to ad-lib those back and forths. Like,
Yeah, that's a lot of meticulous back and forth.
Well, yeah, like the
It's
cold
all-
opens I can understand. Like the
it was all
alphabet cold
carefully
opens
written
and-
stuff, but there was always room for us to play. There was always Jared and Jacob were the co-head writers on the show, and Jacob also directed every episode, which is super handy when one of your head writers is your director, because you don't have to, if you want to make a change, you don't have to get the script approval from the writer, because one of your head writers is there. So we were able to ad lib and add stuff all the time. But also Kiso was always writing. Like, I can't count the number of times we'd show up to a day and we'd be in hair and makeup, and Jared would walk in and go, "So I rewrote the whole scene last night, so you're going to get some new sides in 5 minutes when they finish printing them off, and then we'll run it a few times, and then we'll go put it on camera." And like, so I stopped learning the scenes rigidly, because I knew there was a good chance everything was going to change as soon as I got to set the next day anyways. And the first few years I used to, every time I'd go through a scene, I'd write alt jokes, just to, add my own little voice to it. So I'd show up with a couple options, and sometimes we would just play, something would happen in the moment or something would happen on the day. And every once in a while, I'd tell Jared a story just when we were hanging out, and then he'd call me up and be like, "Hey, can we put that story in the show? And we'll just change some names around, so that, we don't name like any of your actual friends' names, but can we add that into the show?" I think in season 1, that's how Jive and Pete got created. So Jive and Pete, if it was like in the first few seasons, if ever there was a Jive and Pete story, that was a real story that I told Jared and that he wanted to put in the show, and we couldn't use my real buddy's name. So the producer, Mark Montefiore, had a buddy that they called Jive and Pete, and he said he'd get a real kick out of us using his nickname in the show. So Jive and Pete just became the catch-all for a real story that I had to change around the names of the people for. And then out of nowhere, they decided to introduce Jive and Pete, which always made me laugh, because in season 1, we established that Jive and Pete had a daughter old enough to fool around with Wayne in the bathroom at Modine's, in the Modine's episode, when he goes and follows that girl into the John. Gail asks who that is, and I said, "That's Jive and Pete's daughter." And then I make the joke about how Jive and Pete has one tiny ball and one giant ball from when a mule kicked him, and it ruptured the hydrocele on his testicle. And then Jivin' Pete, when they cast him, was pretty much the same age as the gal that we said was his daughter.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I mentioned it to Kiso, and he just went, "Oh, fuck, bud, everybody loves movies."
So how hard was it to do the pluralization stuff for Squirrely Dan? Squirrely Dan obviously had that very distinct speaking pattern.
Yeah, everything in multiples.
Canadian Yoda, I guess, would be the best.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't that hard, but it was a lot of fun. And the key would be figuring out which words to add the plurals to.
Okay.
Which was the funnier word, because that was something I brought to Squirrely Dan. Because being a stand-up, I'd spent years and years cutting my teeth in small towns. That had been my bread and butter. Like, in Canada, you practice in big cities at, Toronto or Calgary. You practice at the open mics there. You get on stage at the clubs in the big cities, but you make most of your money doing small town gigs and corporates. And Christmas time was I'd always spend most of Christmas out in Alberta doing Christmas corporates for the oil companies, just traveling around, but spent years and years in small towns. And I'd met 100 guys like Squirrely Dan who, even though English was their first language, they weren't complete masters of it. And just plurals everywhere where there shouldn't be. And, the malapropisms, the broken phrasing, like their entire existence is a game of broken telephone. And my buddy Ryan Denis and I, we'd spend a lot of time on the road together, and we'd kind of collect these weird phrases that we'd heard from guys in small town, and we'd message each other up, and we'd play like games on the road to entertain ourselves. Like we'd do this one thing called Small Town CSI, where we would pretend to be detectives in small towns, like solving the type of crimes you'd have to solve in the middle of nowhere. And it was like, well, we got ourselves a robbery, so you call Bad Dan and you call Mean Steve, and it's neither one of those guys. We got a mystery. And so when I joined the cast, I wanted to do something with the character that was different from what Jared and Nate had already been doing with their established, Wayne and Daryl characters, and no one was really the plural guy messing up all the words. So I was like, I'm going to start doing that. And the first table read, I started throwing in plurals everywhere and intentionally fucking up a couple of the phrases, and got some laughs. And afterwards, Kiso pulled me aside and went, I really wanted a character that does that, but I didn't know how to write a character that does that. So I'm really glad that you just started doing that. So just keep that up, because I really like it a lot.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he pulled you aside and be like, "Stop stealing my fucking thunder."
Yeah, no. Yeah, he's like, "Hold on a sec, bud." And I don't know if I'm in trouble or what's happening, but he was like, "That's exactly what I want. That's like such a small town thing, and I didn't know how to write that, and that's exactly what I want. So just keep doing that." And that just became the thing. I'd when I take the script home and I'd go over all the lines in my out loud and be like, which is funnier to add a plural to? What's more ridiculous, or what word would be funnier if we mispronounce it? And sometimes I'd throw it out to the committee. We'd be about to shoot a scene and like, is it funnier if we throw the plural here? Is it funnier if we do it here? And be like, oh, definitely there. And then, there were times like the one scene when we were all in the kitchen together, and we're talking about belts. And I actually wasn't in that scene in the script. We were shooting a bunch of stuff, and Kiso's like, all right, in the next scene, I got a new idea. So I want you to do this, and I want you to do that. And then, okay, Trev, you're going to do something like this. And I was like, oh, I'm not in the next scene, bud. And he's like, why aren't you in the next scene? I'm like, because you didn't write me into it, I'm guessing. And he's like, well, that makes no sense. You should be in the next scene. And he's like, Jacob, can we put K-Trev in the next scene? And Jacob's like, I don't care. And he's like, all right, you're in the next scene. So we just ad-libbed most of that scene right there. And yeah, there was no written lines for me. So he was like, say something like this. And so that's when I had the one sentence that was all plural. Wise don't use guys wears belts.
That's my girlfriend's favorite thing about the show is when you're pluralizing everything. So sometimes when she's doing something, I'll tell her, I'll be like, well, that's what I love about you, Miss Wallace. And it's her favorite. It's definitely her favorite.
That line broke the cameraman, Billy, our lead camera operator. He was like, that whole sentence was pluralized. That's impossible.
Every single word. It's
Yeah,
only impossible until you see it done.
It was incredibly well written, but they gave us a lot of freedom too. And it's just what made it fun. And the characters became ours. And, my whole thing was I just try to break Kiso. And if I broke him on a take, the next take I'd do whatever broke him twice, because it was just that was the game.
Do you have something from Letterkenny or even anything else that gets quoted to you on a regular basis?
Well, that's what Eyes appreciates about Jews. Follows me around, and Butts Holes.
Butts Holes.
Butts Holes follows me around. Yeah, I had to put my foot down on the internet there, because I'd post a nice picture of me and my wife celebrating our anniversary, and people would start asking about if she pays attentions, and it's like, listen, fucker, that's
my wife.
This is my fucking wife, asshole. Like, it's one thing when it's three buddies, on a TV show goofing around.
Right.
It's not something you say to someone's fucking wife ever. And my whole family can see my fucking page, you dickhead. So
because of what you had just said, I was really worried the next thing was going to be about your wife's butthole or something like that. I was going to be like, please don't go there. You just said
don't talk about the man's wife's butthole.
No, I was saying I hope the fans aren't going there. That's what I was hoping.
It took a bit of time to hammer it into people's heads that this is not appropriate. And I was always surprised by the pushback I'd get from some people. But most people were like, that makes a lot of sense to just be respectful. And I have really great fans. And it's funny because now a lot of them do the policing for me. If someone makes a comment, they'll be like, you better take that down before he takes it down, because he doesn't like that kind of stuff. And
I never understood why people think. I understand the internet phenomenon of people, keyboard cowboys. I get that, but why do you think it's okay to say something like that to somebody about their wife? I've never understood that about people. Like, I know there's no consequences if you said that to somebody's face, you're getting popped in the mouth. But I've never understood that.
People have, I think the distance has, people have forgotten decorum to a great deal. And, when you're not face to face with someone, you think you can just get away with anything. But also people forget that it's impossible to translate tone through a written word. Yeah. So it's like you can be like, I'm just kidding, but it's like no one knows that you're just kidding.
Yeah.
There's no I'm joking font. It's
and there's very little backlash or anything for anybody when they say stuff like that on the internet, unless they have some sort of celebrity themselves.
Yeah.
So most people just say what they want without caring, because they know what's the worst that's going to happen to them.
There's very little fuck around and find out that happens anymore.
People forget that, you shouldn't. You probably shouldn't write anything on the internet that you wouldn't be willing to say to someone's face. But also respect is a two-way street, and if you want to get it, you'd better give it. And treat people with respect, even when you're writing comments. And there's a whole world of people that got to look at it, and in the future, people's children will read it, and your children will read what you wrote too. in the future, possibly. And just think about the mark that you're leaving.
The internet is forever. Just people
And
need to remember
undefeated
that.
most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much like death, it's undefeated.
So I used to be a big fan of this show, but as I never knew that you were on it at least once or twice. What was your experience with Goosebumps?
Goosebumps was fun. That was like my first professional gig.
How
Or
old
one
were
of
you
my
then?
first professional gigs was Goosebumps. They filmed. I mean, it was all filmed in Canada, mostly in Toronto, and so just about every working kid actor in Toronto had a turn on it at some point or another. So I did 2 episodes during the run. I played bullies both times because by the time I was 13, I was like 5'10", 200 pounds with this voice. Like, I was, I went from a soprano to a bass in the school choir overnight. It was,
That
my
sounds
voice,
like it. What's
voice
the
dropped hard.
what's the one show on Netflix where all the little kids have the adult voices?
Oh,
And Jason Mantzoukas keeps having sex with his pillow.
Oh yeah.
Like
Big
that's Big
Big
Mouth.
Mouth.
Big
That's what we need. We need you on Big Mouth with your voice drawn as a little kid.
Well, actually, it's funny when we did Little Kenny.
oh yeah. Have you ever seen Little Kenny?
I haven't. I've heard about it.
You need
but
to
I
watch
haven't
Little
seen
Kenny.
So when we did that was for Bell, who owns Crave, wanted to put out their own like short form streamer, and so they tapped Kiso to create some content for that. So we drafted up the Little Kenny shorts, which were the Letterkenny animated Letterkennys, except back when we were little kids. And so originally the concept was that we were supposed to have our regular voices, just the characters were going to be younger versions of us. And then we recorded all the Little Kennys just talking normally. And then I got a call from the producers saying, we need you to come in and re-record your Little Kenny dialogue and try to pitch up your voice a bit and sound younger, because we got the final cut. And let's just say a 7-year-old with your voice was jarring.
Oh, that would be
I
fantastic.
want that so bad now.
So
the
I've
fact that it
never seen the
existed
cut with the
somewhere.
original voice, but yeah, we originally did it with our own voices. And yeah, apparently it was somewhat disturbing when like a small, cute kid was like, hey, how's it going?
All right, new goal in life: become rich and famous enough to pay Trevor to just dub over his voice on that.
On anything, it doesn't matter what it is. Just you can.
Doesn't
narrate
sound
dialogue
legal
if
at
you want.
all. Don't own anything, but yeah.
But anyways, back to the Goosebumps stuff. So yeah, my first job, and it was like one of my first professional acting gigs, was The Haunted Mask Part 2, which was like the hour-long special. I think it was the season premiere one season. And it was actually kind of funny because the girl who'd starred in the Haunted Mask Part 1, Catherine Long, we went to grade school together. And her dad was my gym teacher in grade school. So I'd known her for a million years. And when I got to set, because kid actors, you have to have parents with you. So her mom was on set with her. So I'd known her mom forever because they used to do the school plays. And that was one of those things, like I got that job purely from repetition. Like I'd been auditioning probably 3 times a week for a month for different Goosebumps episodes. And then they were like, we need 3 bullies. And they were like, oh, that K. Trevor Wilson's been in here every week this month, and he's pretty intimidating. Why don't you get him? So they threw me a bone on that one, and that was my first job. And it ended up our scene got left on the cutting room floor. I think we got cut for time, or it interrupted the flow of the show. But it was pretty much just three bullies corner the kid wearing the old man mask and push him around and huck eggs at him for a bit, and then he scares us and runs off. And
it's like a reverse Scooby-Doo episode there.
Yeah. And I just remember one of the guys, one of the other bullies was one of the O'Doyle brothers from Billy Madison.
Really?
I was like, we were working together. I'm like, I recognize you. Were you one of the O'Doyles? And he was like, yeah, I did that. And we also worked together again on another show years later, a Disease of the Week flick or something. Oh, it was the Loretta Claiborne story. It was a made-for-TV movie about American sprinter Loretta Claiborne. And again, we played bullies. We were two guys that were pushing her around at a bus stop, and she bum rushed me into a fence. And that was Kimberly Elise from Diary of a Mad Black Woman played Loretta Claiborne. And she was really awesome and super intense in that role. But yeah, that was that was the second time I worked with one of the O'Doyles.
So did you have growing up some kind of comedic influence? Like, did you maybe watch SCTV, or was there a stand-up that spoke to you?
Oh, sure. I mean, it was John Candy was my big influence. My big sort of start into it. I think I was like 7 years old when I put it together that this was his job. And it was like
hey, I can do that.
Like my dad goes to the office and
Wait,
John Candy plays Uncle Buck. Like,
right?
That's such a better job.
He gets paid to do the mess around while driving with yeah.
So and then John Candy was for sure my idol growing up, and then as I got older, I got more into stand up. As I got older, my dad would play a lot of stand up for me. We'd listen to like Robin Williams and George Carlin albums and Bill Cosby albums on the car rides, and I'd like stay up late on the weekends when I could and watch. Because there used to be a lot more stand up on TV. I remember A&E had Evening at the Improv, and then they'd have like the John Biner shows, Comedy on the Road, and Caroline's Comedy Hour.
That's most of what Comedy Central was its first couple of years.
Yeah,
I remember when that first came out. That was all. I mean, it was it. It was just stand-up comedy.
That's what Comedy Central was intended to be originally.
I'd watch just a ton of those, and I'd get like Eddie Murphy VHSs from the video store and memorized Raw and Delirious as a kid.
Favorite Eddie Murphy skit? What is it? Everybody's got a favorite Eddie Murphy joke.
There's so many great ones. The one that like the first one that I really remember was the ice cream.
That is my number one all-time favorite.
Ice cream. I'm gonna eat it all.
I like the family barbecue, but yeah,
that was a great Goonie Goo Goo.
With Aunt Bunny ripping down the stairs. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh Lord, sweet Jesus, baby.
What the fuck is Goonie Goo Goo, Gus?
Your wife's a Bigfoot, isn't she, Gus? No, I used to love all that stuff, man. I remember watching that stuff, going like, "Is nobody going to stop me? Am I allowed to hear this stuff? Like, this is insane." It's I had the same effect when I was 13. I saw Blazing Saddles for the first time, and it blew my mind the things that you could get away with back then. I was like, "Wait, what?"
The first time I heard Richard Pryor was that moment for me. It was, you can say this and not get in trouble for saying this?
Well, I think I was about 7 when my dad let me watch Life of Brian with him.
Oh, wow.
And my mom was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "He's not going to get it." He's not gonna get the references.
At that age, you don't have to get
some
it.
of that stuff.
You know, you just know that you're able to hear the words that they're saying, and you don't normally get that, and you're like, "Ooh, I
Yeah.
like this." You know, getting it will come later.
The last thing Mom wants you doing is telling those jokes in church. That's all.
Oh yeah. No, that was that was the hard part. Is once I'd heard them, getting me to stop repeating them.
So once you yourself got into stand-up, what was your very first stand-up experience like?
Very first time I got up at a club to do stand-up. Because I mean, I'd gone to theater school. I went to a performing arts, a creative arts high school, so I'd majored in drama, and I started acting like as a kid. So when I was like 14, I got my agent and started working. But I'd done plays and like I was at one point, my buddy Matt and I were the youngest people to study improv at the Second City.
Oh
Oh
wow.
wow!
Because we were in ninth grade and we wanted to take improv classes, and they were like, my parents tried to called up the Second City, and they're like, our kids wants to take classes, and they didn't have youth courses at the time, and they're like, all we have are adult classes, and you know, I don't really know if it's appropriate for kids. And our parents are like, look, you're not going to say anything to these kids they haven't already heard. Like they're pretty mature kids. And so, yeah, it was funny because like a couple years after we took the Second City courses, they started offering like youth classes and stuff like that. But like our class was like me and my buddy Matt, and then the closest person to our age was a 19-year-old gal, Maeve, who used to bartend in my neighborhood, as it turns out. And then everyone else was like, 20s to 40s. A lot of people either aspiring to be actors or like accountants who were trying to improve their public speaking abilities. And it was an interesting mix of people. Yeah, the first like real stand up I did was my first year of college. I was at Humber College taking their comedy writing and performance course, and me and my buddies in the class, we'd all call into the open mics at Yuck Yucks every week to try to get on. And we found out it was easier to do it in Ajax, which is like just outside of Toronto, because in Toronto you'd maybe get up once a month, but in Ajax you could get up every 2 weeks because less people were calling out there. So we'd all call in the morning for the sign up, and then after lunch check back to see who'd made the cut, and then we'd all just go out as a group, whether we were on the show or not, to either like try to get on the next week and support our buddy who was going up. So one week I finally got on, and we all drove out to Ajax, and I did my 5-minute set. And coming from a theater background, I haven't been on stage. I was completely comfortable performing, but it was like my first time doing stuff that I'd written in that sense. Like, I mean, I'd written plays before, but I hadn't written stand up but I thought it was going to be like easy because I had all this performance experience, and I had 2 jokes that worked, and one of them was a joke about how bad I was doing. And the rest of it was absolutely brutal, but the 2 laughs were enough to make me want to come back and do it again and again. And yeah, just kept grinding it out, and then slowly over time figured out my voice and started writing for that guy. And I've always had people ask for advice on comedy, and I find that when people start doing stand up, for the first few years, they're doing an impression of what they think stand up is supposed to sound like. They're going up there, and whether they're aware of it or not, they're emulating the comedians that they've grown up watching. and it's not really their authentic stuff. It's what they think they're supposed to be talking about. And then after, it's like that 10,000 hours thing. After you've put in the time, you sort of figure out, oh, okay, I should be doing more of this, or, it works better when I do that. And okay, this is sort of more of the direction I kind of feel I want to go into. And then you figure out what your voice actually is on stage. And then it's like, okay, now I can write for that guy as opposed to, writing for whatever comic I thought I was trying to be. And then it becomes easier. And it's funny because, the first few years, it'll take you forever to build up a set. And then, the later years, it's, you can think of a joke that morning and have it ready for stage by the end of the day.
Believe it or not, it's a lot the same way in wrestling as well. Like, because I remember the first few years that I was doing it, I was nothing but a Shawn Michaels ripoff from everything, entrance to the moves and everything. And you're about what I want to say 5 years in for me when it finally clicked and I started feeling like myself and finding my own way, and everything really does kind of just start to fall into place. Like you said, you got your first laughs, with two of your jokes. You're like, all right, well, this works. So scrap the rest of it and keep this, and let's see what else we got. It's the same way with that.
And actually, some of the best advice I got in the early days, there's a Canadian comic, Mike McDonald, who's no longer with us. There's like one of the three Mike McDonalds. There's Mike McDonald's from the Doobie Brothers, Michael McDonald from Mad TV, and Canadian Mike McDonald. And Mike was absolute legend in Canada. Like, he had comedy specials on the CBC here, and absolute genius writer. And one of my first years doing it, my buddies and I were volunteering at the Canadian Comedy Awards to be around comics, and our goal was to like smoke a joint with a real comedian, and Mike was totally down to smoke weed with a bunch of college kids, and we just bent his ear and listened to him hold court for as long as we could, and told us some great stories. But afterwards he was like, I feel like I need to give you guys like a real good solid piece of lasting advice. And he goes, I've been racking my brain and I think I've got it. And he said, never throw away a joke. Never throw it away. Something about your instincts told you that it was funny. So hold on to it, because the problem is you're not a good enough comic now to make it work. But save it. Save all your notebooks, save all your ideas. And then years down the road, go back and look them over again, because you'll be a better comic and you'll be able to take that idea and make it work.
Makes sense. It's going to fit in somewhere.
So speaking of jokes and your stand-up act, I have a question, because it's one of my favorite bits that I've heard you do. What inspired the Captain Crunch bit?
It was one of my first times working in the States. I was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, opening for my buddy Matt Davis, who's a terrific American comic from the South. And it was like super early in the morning. I think we'd already done our shows and had a bunch of drinks and went to Walmart to go shopping and watch, and people watching. So we were like 2 a.m. in a 24-hour Walmart in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Best place in the world for people watching.
And I was in the cereal aisle, and I was just like, what the fuck are all of these Cap'n Crunches? Like, I knew you guys had some shit, but it was like literally so many Captain Crunches that I'd never ever seen before. It was like I knew about Crunch Berries, but we didn't have them in Canada at the time. It was like all we had was straight up basic Cap'n Crunch, and it's like there's Cap'n Crunch with crunch berries, peanut butter crunch, and then oops all berries. And then that's not even including like the seasonal Cap'n Crunches that come out.
Right.
And I'm looking at all of it, and Matt finds me and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm just like my whole country's getting straight fucked over here on sugar cereals. You guys have so many things we don't get. And like, and I've known it for years because it's like we get a lot of American TV. Like I'd seen commercials for Cookie Crisp, but you never could find them in a Canadian store. They won't let Canadian kids eat chocolate chip cookies for breakfast, but we'd all heard about it, and
it's just diabetes in a box.
Basically,
I was
there's a reason my feet want to
kind
fall
of
off.
drunk, staring at all the different Cap'n Crunches and getting really irritated, and I started venting to Davis about it, and he's like, "That's fucking funny, man." Like,
Get that down.
So I just started jamming with the idea and playing with it, and now it's people bring me Cap'n Crunch so much. Like
Jesus.
I have autographed Cap'n Crunch boxes for fans, but like people gift me. Matt, anytime he comes to Canada, his mom will send him up with Cap'n Crunch for me. And but it's funny because now we have crunch berries in Canada, and I'm taking full responsibility for that.
As you should.
The entire nation can thank me because I'm the one who raised a stink about our lack of crunch berries in this nation, and we finally have access to crunch berries in Canada. So you are welcome, Canada.
If we've got enough to have a cereal that is all crunch berries, you should have cereal that is partially crunch berries.
Right.
We should be able to get some crunch berries in there.
Listen, you guys shared Tim Hortons with us. It's only fair.
My wife got so mad the first time she saw Tim Hortons in the States because you guys, they had ice cap flavors that we didn't get in Canada. And she was like, "This is bullshit. This is our store. They shouldn't have things we don't have here. We should have things they don't have there." Like, we were in the Mall of America, and she was like, "They're not allowed to have Oreo fucking ice caps. We don't have Oreo ice caps." This is.
I wouldn't even know what Tim Hortons was if it wasn't for how much Kevin Smith raved about it, because he for an American, that's a guy that loves Canada just implicitly. Like, he will talk about it like he lives there now. But he always says,
do Letterkenny.
Was he?
He was.
That's our guy. That's like our number one guy, or at least for me. I don't want to speak for Kip, but when it comes to like people who create things, like, that's the man in my eyes.
Oh, I was a huge Kevin Smith fan too. I mean, still am.
You seem like a guy who would fit in his movies and stuff too.
That's one of my goals, is to do a Kevin Smith movie. But like I have a Silent Bob hat in the other room, actually, and I've got just about everything. I've got an autographed Chasing Amy DVD in my console. I got a Affleck Was the Bomb and Phantoms hoodie up in my closet.
Nice.
I got to meet him when he was touring the last Jay and Silent Bob movie. He came to Toronto, and my wife, as a gift through the Letterkenny people, hooked up for me to go backstage and meet him, and he was super cool. But he was supposed to do an episode. They had a thing written up, and it was supposed to be a scene at the produce stand, but it was all going to be different actors playing the characters. And then we were going to show up at the end, and it was going to be like a different town that we were driving through. And these guys were just us in another town. So Kevin was going to be Squirrely Dan.
That's fitting.
In the cold open. And Russell Peters was going to do it. And Trisha Helford was going to be Katie.
Oh, wow.
And at one point, they had Norm Macdonald was
Oh,
also going to do it. I think he was going to be Wayne. And
wow.
Norm backed out first, and then they had something in place. But literally, Trisha and Russell were in Sudbury to film it. And it was not long after Kevin had the heart attack. And he was supposed to come up and do it. And like the night before, his doctor said, I don't think it's a good idea for you to fly right now. I don't think you should. I don't want you to go do this. So his doctor put the kibosh on it, and Kevin had to make the call pretty much the day before and be like, I'm really sorry, but my doctor said no, I can't do this. And Russell was fucking furious. He really wanted to do the show, but it was one of those things where there was nothing you could do, and without two of the characters there, the whole thing just ended up getting scrapped. But yeah, Kevin was supposed to be Squirrely Dan in a cold open, which would have been.
They're doing Jay and Silent Bob 3 Store Wars is what it's called. So if we're able to have him on before they start filming that next summer, we just got to keep putting it in his ear.
Oh, just keep
subliminally be like, you know who would be great in that movie? Trevor Wilson. Perfect. That guy would be fantastic. I don't care what role. He could be Silent Bob's brother. There you go.
I know Kevin loved Letterkenny. That was one of the reasons we got him to do it. But
we've been lucky enough to meet him twice now. We went on the cruise with him, the Cruise Askew cruise that he did.
Okay, right on.
Got to meet him there, and then
they
we
did the first ever
Chronicon
out here, like they had in the second movie. But yeah, no, he's an amazing guy. You can't get away from him without getting a hug nowadays. Every time it's hey man, what's up, and just instant hug.
20 minutes of conversation, whether you like it or not. If you
trigger him, yeah. If you trigger him, which is
great guy.
I'm still convinced that's why Jason Mewes doesn't want to talk to me that much.
No, that's because you were shitty with him.
We did the meet and greet, and I had written a book that I gave to Kevin because he was one of the inspirations for the book. And I don't want anything from him. I just wanted him to have a copy that I had inscribed a thank you in. And we were standing there talking about it, and they had asked us, they're like, please don't get Kevin talking. He will go. He will not stop. Like, he will talk to everybody for 20 minutes straight if he can. And so there we are, face to face talking. And if you listen to Kip, he'll tell you it looked like we were leaning in, like we were going to start to kiss or something.
10 more seconds, they would be making out. I swear to God.
And meanwhile, he's behind me with Jason Mewes, and they're all getting pissed. Like, can we move this along? Yo, I'm hungry. We got about 1,000 people to get through. And then we take the picture, and I bail, and I forgot to even say hello to Mewes or anything like that. I was like, oh, shit. I just completely famed him. Yeah. All right. Well, my bad.
That's funny.
But yeah. No, they're great guys. They're great guys.
It's funny. I was supposed to be in Portland next weekend doing stand-up, but I got bumped for Kevin.
I mean, it's not really a bad guy to get bumped for.
Only weekend Kevin can do it, and we really been trying to get him for a while. So, like, do you mind rescheduling? And I was like, I'm going to say yes because I want to come back and work there, and I don't want people to be mad at me. And I also like Kevin, so.
So, do you write for anybody else as far as jokes go or everything?
Oh, because we've seen you credited as a writer on like Michael Che and Anthony Jeselnik, and we didn't know if it was accurate or not. Like
we do research for these quite a bit. I saw something that was showing.
I've never written for anybody else that I know about.
Maybe they're just taking your jokes and you don't know it. Who knows?
I did meet Che at JFL, and met Jeselnik at JFL, and both were, really awesome dudes, very complimentary. Jeselnik judged Roast Battle Season 1.
Oh God.
When I was in that, he judged my battle against Olivia Stadler. And
So I know about it. Kip doesn't know about it, but
Haven't
it
seen the
goes
roast
back to
battles.
the roast battle and the wrestling thing. Can you tell him about your Chris Ben roast line?
Okay, yeah.
Say
So
that
that's
again,
when I was.
Marbles.
The Chris
That's when I was
roast
battling
Thank you.
Earl Skakel, and Earl, another big wrestling fan, and actually, credit where credit's due, my buddy Tyler Morrison gave me the line. He was like, "Earl's a wrestling guy. You should burn him with something like this." And the line was, "Earl likes to dress up as wrestlers when he works out. Next time you should dress up as Chris Benoit, because the only thing your weight room should be used for is killing yourself and anyone who's loved you."
Did you get any heat for that one?
I was really afraid I was going to. And I talked to, first guy I ever talked to about it was Blue Meanie. And I was really worried I was going to get heat from that. And he was like, no one's like making bones about what happened there. Like,
Yeah.
like don't worry. No one's mad at you for that. So,
So before we wrap it up with our question here at the end, I gotta ask, what was the luchador burlesque show that you did with Ron Funches?
I didn't do it. I was just there with him.
Oh, you were just there with it. Okay.
I was one of my first times out in LA after I got my my first American agents. I'd gone out for like pilot season in February, and Ron let me crash on his couch for a bit. And well, actually, I was his son was visiting his mom, so I was actually crashing in his son's room while his son was away. But Ron was guest not ring announcing, but doing guest commentary for Lucha Vavoom with Blaine. And so he's like, I'm going down to the. I think they did that at the same place where they filmed Lucha Underground. So
Yeah,
like,
the Aztec temple place that they had set up there.
yeah. So it was the same spot there. So he's like, I'm doing this wrestling burlesque show out in Los Angeles. So I don't think Ron had a car at the time. So his buddy Brian drove us, and the three of us went out there, and Ron got us in for free. And yeah, he did the guest commentary on the show, and Brian and I just hung out and watched the show. So it was like, yeah, it was burlesque and then wrestling. And so it was pretty crazy because it was like, some legit luchadors were always on those shows. And then a lot of the California indie guys, I think Joey Ryan and Candice LeRae had a match against Cassandro,
Okay.
the Exotico that they just did a movie about, which was incredible because they did like the fucking stage dive spot that they always did in Lucha Underground. But yeah, it was a really cool show.
I was always amused by Joey Ryan's spot where somebody would grab his dick and then he would twist her and flip them.
That was the
Don't
dumbest
think
shit
he'd
I've ever seen in my
started doing
life.
that spot yet, but he was still doing like the boob grab suplex, and it's yeah, you look back at it and the signs were there. It's not surprising.
Yeah, it was leading to it. Speaking of boob grab suplex, that reminds me of one other thing. How did you land on the name Sex Cop Fire Penis for your first album?
It was four main stories in the album. It was about sex. There's one about cops, one about fires, and the penis came in church.
Simple enough.
Because I was like coming up with ideas, and I was like hanging out with buddies. I'm like, I don't know what to call the album. And my first idea was I was going to call it Between Festivals, because I recorded it in Kingston in between the Montreal and Toronto Just for Laughs festivals. So I was chronologically and geographically in between festivals when I recorded it. And my buddy Nathan McIntosh was like, that's a really stupid name for an album. Like, that's kind of a douchebag name. You probably shouldn't call it that. And I was like, what about Sex Cop Fire Penis? And he was like, I don't know what that is, but that's ridiculous.
Perfect.
Like,
Perfect.
you should do that for sure. And then, Jimmy Kimmel, I remember when I did his show, really loved that name for an album. He just enjoyed saying it. Yeah, it was the four main subjects thrown together as if it was a name.
Okay. So before we hit the very last part, the very last section that we do, is there anything that you got coming up that you want to talk about, that you want to tell people that they can catch, or anything like that?
Or where they can find you online.
Or where they can
stuff
find
like
you
that.
online. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm the only K. Trevor Wilson on the internet, so it's super easy to find me. I'm on Instagram. I've got TikTok. I've just got to start actually posting things on there. And, I'm the only one of me on the internet, and I'm hitting the road. Just did my last show of this year, but next year I've got shows coming up. I'm in Philadelphia, I think at the end of January. And then February, I'm in Houston, and I got it all on my phone here.
Any chance you're coming to Chicago anytime?
I'm hoping to. I don't have anything on the books right now.
Well, you've got my retirement match booked already, so
Yeah. So I'm in right now. I've got January. I've got Philadelphia. I've got Houston and Raleigh, North Carolina in February, and I just booked San Francisco in March.
Nice.
So I got those shows coming up, and all of those will be up on my website very soon in the new year. And I'm returning to the Halifax Comedy Festival in May, and the year's just starting out, so I'll be adding a ton more bookings. And got some TV and film stuff in the works, but nothing I can really talk about right now. But keep your eyes peeled, because I'm always going to show up somewhere.
and hopefully Jay and Silent Bob 3.
Hopefully, Jay and Silent Bob 3.
We're gonna manifest that. We're gonna make it happen. We're putting it out.
We're putting it in the universe. Yes.
Into the universe.
So we are big fans of James Lipton inside the Actor Studio.
Okay.
And the way he would always close his interviews was with the Bernard Pivot questionnaire. We like to do that as well, because it's a nice homage to those two.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start this off. What is your favorite word?
My favorite word, pumpernickel.
That's a unique one. I haven't heard that one yet.
It's brand new to me. What is your least favorite word?
Cancer.
Yeah, I can understand why that one would be.
What sound or noise do you love?
Laughter.
And what sound or noise do you hate?
Oh, squeaking styrofoam.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Professional wrestler.
I'm telling we're gonna get you there. Gonna get you there.
And what profession other than your own would you never like to attempt?
Catholic priest.
Sorry.
Likes him a little bit on the older side, is what he's saying. What turns you on, like creatively?
I like the absurdity of comedy and how I love it when comedy is comedy and you throw out all the rules and just allow things to be funny for the sake of funny.
What turns you off?
When the bad guys win.
So you weren't a big fan of the movie Arlington Road. Got it.
Yeah.
That was the first time I ever saw the bad guys win anywhere in anything, you know?
I mean, aside from wrestling and whatnot. So.
True. What's your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
It's a good, solid one. All right. And finally, Trevor, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You look like you've lost weight.
Fantastic.
It's a good place to end it. That's a good place to end it. Thank you very much.